Okay, this is part 3 of my eating disorder story. So, some other things that I'll move on to, along with my anxiety, my trichotillomania, and my obsessive compulsive disorder. Well, with my obsessive compulsive disorder, I really didn't discuss that. So, with that, it kind of developed into being a clean freak. And this was around gosh, I was like, my obsessive compulsive disorder started when I was, I think I was around 8 years old. I started to obsessively wonder, whenever I was at school, if when I got home, if the house would be clean, and I would like worry about it all day. Even when I was home, um, and my sisters got out any toys, or if anybody made a mess, I would freak out and have to clean it up right away. My mom never had to clean the house. I was always the one cleaning the house. And I was seriously a fanatic about it. I would get out the vacuum cleaner, every possible cleaning tool in the house, and have to go over the house tons and tons of times a day just to feel that everything was at peace. And looking back on it now, I feel like it was a reflection of how I felt about myself. On the outside, everything looked perfect. Like on the outside, I felt like everything had to look perfect. But on the inside, I was a mess. And with my obsessive compulsive, with my cleaning, I would clean so much, and if things were out of order, I would just stuff them in drawers. It didn't matter where it was. I wasn't obsessive about organizing things. I just wanted it out of the way so nobody could see it. Just everything perfect on the outside, the surface perfect, but on the inside, stuffing things inside. So that's where I felt like where a part of my obsessive compulsive disorder stemmed from, with the obsessing about everything having to be neat and perfect. Um, Also, my perfectionism also stems from everybody around me. Growing up, I was known as the goody two shoe, or that's what people referred to me as. That's what I was called growing up, especially a lot of my aunts and cousins, because most of my other cousins were more wild and partiers than I was. So, if I did something or slipped up and said even a cuss word or something, it was like, Sabrina said that? Oh my gosh, I can't believe Sabrina did that. And every time I did something that was just out of control and not in my little box, I just felt so guilty for it and so out of place, and like I wasn't me. I had to be this perfect person, this perfect child, this perfect student. With my dad hounding me at my grades, I just felt like I had to be in this little box. I felt like I was always watched because I was the oldest child and the oldest grandchild, and all this. I just had so much pressure on me. Um, Back then, to just be the perfect and the good child. Um, I just felt like everybody else had room to mess up, but I didn't. There was an exception for me. I was different from everybody else, or that's what I felt. I was different from everybody else. So, other things, in school, I remember when they started giving the lecture about becoming a woman, and getting your period. And while listening to that, I was so afraid of ever getting my period because it meant to me that I had to grow up. And I didn't like the sound of that. I wanted to stay a child, and I wanted to control staying a child and control everything around me, since I was already controlling everything around me. I was already controlling myself, having to be perfect, and controlling my grades, making sure they were always up, controlling and making sure the house was always perfect. Just everything was always perfect, and I just didn't want to grow up, and I didn't want to have to face any more pressures. I just thought growing up meant more pressures, and I felt like I couldn't take anymore. So, that built up in me, and I uh, didn't get my period until I was 16 years old and already had an eating disorder. And the reason, okay, so we'll get into my eating disorder now. That was a big trigger for me. I mean, especially all the stuff, all the emotional stuff that was built up, obviously was, and my anxiety and my trich, and all those things were big for me in the development of my eating disorder. And growing up, my mom always had laxatives and Slim Fast stuff and diet products. All the stuff in the house was always diet, fat free, sugar free, low fat, everything. So I always grew up with that too. And my eating disorder sort of escalated into the mindset that, well, if you don't want to grow up, you can control it by not eating and not getting your period. So, the thing that also led up to that was my dad finally making the last straw comment when I was around 14 years old and I was starting to develop hips and going through puberty a little bit. He said to me one time when I was walking through the kitchen and he was reading his newspaper, he said, "Hey Sabrina, have you put on a little bit of weight?" And that stunned and shocked me because I didn't realize it at the time. I didn't realize that my body was starting to change or anything. And my mom heard that and she ran in there and said, "You don't say